Welcome again, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you all so much for spending your time here with us today. I know how valuable everybody's time is, so I really appreciate it. And just spending time with the alternative balance community is really special. I know there's a lot of super talented practitioners here, and alternative balance is such a great support for all of our businesses. So it's really an honor to be here and to share with you all today. So we're going to talk about strategies to boost your brain. These strategies really have the potential to level up your life and to better your overall health and potentially to support your clients as well. So, quick disclaimer before we get started, any of the information that I share with you today is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice or treatment. And just a little bit about me. I am the founder of Counterculture Wellness. I'm a holistic nutritional therapy practitioner, and I'm also an autoimmune protocol coach. And I really help people to regain their energy and to reclaim their lives. And just to share a little short story about me, my own journey with autoimmunity is what led me to this work. And at one point, I had a list of almost more than 70 symptoms that were seemingly unrelated. And I really thought that I was doing all the right things, but I was becoming really overwhelmed and confused by my symptoms. And there's one specific day that I remember really being at my worst. I was going for a hike, which is one of my favorite things to do. And the symptoms that I had been dealing with for so long really felt unmanageable. I was super dizzy. I was having trouble breathing. This was at the heat of COVID as well, so I had concerns about that. And I just had so much anxiety about the state of my health. And that day I wasn't able to finish the hike and I had to turn back. And I was really struggling both physically and mentally and feeling like my life was just passing me by. But soon after, I finally received my autoimmune diagnosis of Hashimoto's. And that's when I felt empowered again because I had some answers. And so my education and years of research had prepared me to create a protocol for myself. And in just under a year, my symptoms were almost completely gone. I even went back and conquered that same hike, which was truly a full circle moment for me. So experiencing my own progress and then seeing the progress of my clients is really what drives my mission, which is to help people believe that optimal health is possible, even with chronic illness. And the reason I'm focusing on the brain today is for two main reasons. Number one, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, depression commonly coexists with autoimmunity. And number two, dealing with an invisible illness like an autoimmune disease or a mental illness in our society is extremely challenging, and it can be difficult to find the right kind of care. So my goal today is to empower you to believe in your body's resiliency and the body's ability to repair itself. And so I'm here to share some tools to really support in that. But ultimately, no matter where you are on your health journey, you've come to the right place today. You are prioritizing your health by being here, and your body and your mind will thank you. So what we're going to talk about today, before we get started, feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. I'll be checking it throughout. I'd love for this to be a collaborative conversation. We'll go through the slides that you see on the screen, and I'll be asking some questions to the group throughout. So I really encourage you to participate in any way you feel comfortable. If you want to chime in, unmute yourselves. If you want to pop your answers in the chat, feel free to do so. But what we're really going to talk about today is which foods, herbs, and spices we can utilize to boost our brain health and function. We're going to talk about how we can elevate our productivity and our mood. We'll pause a few times for some breathwork exercises. I actually decided to take these out prior to setting up this call today. So I apologize for that, that error actually. We'll talk about how digestion is tied to brain health and what we can do to improve it. And then we'll talk about some practical tips to optimize our sleep and relaxation to support our better health overall. So when we think about mental illness is defined by health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior. This is a really broad definition. So some of these illnesses can present themselves as a chronic condition with an established diagnosis, and some can show up as an intermittent symptom. So looking at the list on the right of these associated symptoms, I'd love to hear how many of you have experienced brain fog. You can raise your hand or type me in the chat. I find that this one is really common for a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people are experiencing this. So I know when I was struggling with my own health, there were feelings of anxiety that was coming up for me. I definitely experienced depressive symptoms as well. And I really wasn't getting the answers that I needed from the medical system to address these episodes properly and to move on with my life. And so it's really important for me to be an advocate for others and to provide some insight into how to become a specialist of your own personal care and your own personal needs, because you know your body best. And I believe that some of the tools we're going to talk about today can really help to start tackling some of these symptoms at home. The picture of mental health in America today. You may have started reading this slide. So I want to talk about some statistics from Mental Health America in 2023. So 21% of adults are experiencing a mental illness. That's over 50 million Americans. And 55% of adults with a mental illness receive no treatment. 23% of adults report experiencing 14 or more unhealthy days each month, and they were not able to see a doctor due to the costs. So 14 or more unhealthy days each month, that's half our lives. So, and the last one really strikes me. 40% of youth with major depression do not receive mental health treatment. And I think many of us can think of the societal impacts affecting our youth today and why this number might be so high. And we really don't know the long-term effects that this will have in our youth in their adult years. And I think part of this is that medical care is not accessible to everybody in America. And this is why taking our brain health into our own hands is so important. So I'm going to provide you with some tools today that you can start using to improve your brain health and the health of your families starting today. And many of these tools won't cost you anything. So I want to talk quickly about SMART goals. Being that you're all entrepreneurs, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think you've probably mostly heard of this before. But just briefly, S stands for specific, so think actionable. M is for measurable, so how many times or minutes per day or per week are you engaging in this goal? A stands for attainable. So I suggest starting very small and build up once the goal becomes a habit. And then the R stands for relevant, so it connects to a larger goal or a larger result. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. And T stands for time bound. So for the next 3 months or for the next 6 months, 1 month even, a time bound goal that feels really achievable. So I'll encourage you throughout to think about goal setting. And to the right is just an example of a worksheet that you could use to start building some brain boosting goals. And if this looks useful, feel free to email me after the session. I'll send it right over to you. And I suggest aiming for just about 3 goals today. I'll be sharing a lot of information with you, so you'll have to take what will work best for you, but try not to overwhelm yourself with too many changes today.
Jaclyn, I think MJ might have a question.
Oh, sure.
No, actually, I was just saying that I could see your slides or whatever you had asked a while ago.
Okay.
And I just did a
Yeah.
thumbs up or whatever I thought. Thanks.
Thank you, MJ. All right, so thinking specifically about the relevancy of our brain boosting goals. So you might be inspired to set some goals today, and I encourage you to find that anchor. Find that key motivator that's going to really help you to continue going back to this goal and reassuring yourself as to why you chose this goal. This is going to help you stay on the path towards achieving this goal, and it's going to really just again be that anchor for you. So maybe you're here to be sharp as you age, to boost your self-esteem, to excel in your career. Maybe you're looking to prevent or manage disease. That's the reason I've chose this topic today. So find what resonates for you, and if you want, take a moment to write that down. Drop it in the chat if you feel inspired. I'd love to hear. And if there's something that's not on the page, let us know. You might inspire someone else as well. So this mindset shift can really be applied to any goal in your life. Having a purpose really fosters that commitment, especially on those days where you may not really feel like engaging in these practices. It's really going to help you stay committed. So now that we're grounded in our purpose, let's dive into the content. So in my practice, I practice a food-first approach. Food is information for the brain and for the body, and I believe to be one of the most impactful tools that can really fuel our brain and our body, especially when we're dealing with illness. So we'll talk more specifically today about some vital nutrients for brain function that are needed for our daily function. We'll talk about some therapeutic foods for the brain. We'll talk a little bit about the microbiome and our mood and some actionable tools that we can use to improve digestion and to support a healthy microbiome and how that relates to our feelings and our moods. And we'll talk a little bit about some foods and environmental factors to avoid for optimal brain health and function. And I use this same approach with my autoimmune clients as well. As if your brain isn't working, your body isn't working. It really goes both ways. So when we think about the vital nutrients for brain function, we're talking about number one, omega-3s. Omega-3s support healthy cell growth. They also protect our neurons and our joint mobility. They help us move around the world a little bit easier. Antioxidants for cleansing and detoxifying. We do live in a world with a lot of toxins around us, so these are especially important for the brain. We'll talk about some specific herbs and spices for their protective properties and their mineral richness. Essential amino acids, also very important for the brain and supporting hormone balance, supporting our attention and our cognitive flexibility, our ability to change tasks quickly and adapt. And we'll talk about some key supplements that we can utilize to sort of fill in the gaps within our diets. So number one, omega-3s. Healthy fats are one of the most important nutrients for the brain. DHA is a type of omega-3 fatty acid, which makes up 60% of the brain. So healthy fats are anti-inflammatory, and they serve as building blocks for our cell membranes and our hormones. And they also boost the absorption of other nutrients. So taking a look at this list, let me know in the chat, do you have any of these ingredients in your kitchen right now? that you could start incorporating more often? Is there something on the list that you want more of? For me, it's really important for me to have these healthy oils. So regarding the oils on the list, in order to preserve the omega-3 content, we want to be cognizant about the temperature that we're bringing said oil to. For example, avocados sustain a high heat in cooking, so they're great for baking, sauteing, that sort of thing. Extra virgin olive oil. I think this one's pretty familiar for most people, and we know how healthy it is. It's most healthy when we're talking about omega-3 content. It's most healthy unheated. So drizzling over your meal or using it as a dressing or in a dressing. Coconut oil, I recommend cold pressed, and that can sustain a pretty medium heat. And let me check in the chat. Yes, we've got hemp hearts in the pantry. I don't know how to use them. Okay, great. So hemp hearts, nuts, seeds. Instead of thinking of these as maybe snacks, think of them as toppings. So you could top your salads. You could even just top your veggies or your side dishes with them. They're really great, and hemp hearts specifically don't have a whole lot of flavor, so it's not going to really impact the flavor profile of your dish. So it's really just that added bonus and those benefits of the omega-3s. An easy way to incorporate chia seeds is adding them to drinking water. Another way where you won't really notice that they're there. And then, so I invite you to pick one additional healthy fat source that you'd consider incorporating into your meals. Write that down. Feel free to drop it in the chat. MJ, sounds like you've got all these except MCT. Is it okay to use olive oil in sauce? Yes, it is definitely okay to use it. If you're cooking it for at a very high heat, you're just not going to get as many of the omega-3 benefits, but still lots of other benefits in olive oil as well. Next is antioxidants. So antioxidants protect the cells, especially the cells of the brain. And take a look at this list. Let me know in the chat some of your favorite antioxidant-rich foods. Mine's always dark chocolate. It's also really high in fiber. And one thing to note is that typically antioxidant-rich foods are rich in color. So looking at this picture, they're super bright and vibrant. And I want to point out that a vegetable-rich diet is really important for brain health. And having a variety of fruits and vegetables are really going to support the body and the brain best. Let's see, we've got a question in the chat. Is canned beets okay or fresh is better? I would say fresh is better when you can get it, but in any case, if it's going to encourage you to eat more fruits and vegetables, I'd opt for that. And maybe just take a look at the ingredients to see what it's stored in. Especially fruits can sometimes be stored in a sugar-based substance. Want to try to avoid those and more choosing fresh when possible. How to use MCT oil? I have some that I have tried keto and put it in my coffee. Yes, that's perfect. In your coffee, in your tea. You could add it to dressings as well. It's another one that's not super flavorful, so it's more of like that added benefit. What brand of chocolate do you recommend? I love Hue, I believe it is. I believe that's what it's called, but let me verify that. I can get back to you on that, MJ. And okay. Next one is essential amino acids. So amino acids support the production of serotonin and dopamine. These are precursors for neurotransmitters that play an important role in our mental health and our well-being. The most bioavailable amino acids, meaning the most easily accessible for our bodies to absorb, are from animal proteins. And what I want to point out here is that quality is really key for optimal brain benefits and nutritional value, especially when we're talking about animal products. Choosing hormone-free, antibiotic-free, free range, grass-fed, those are your ideal options whenever possible. And there are definitely a few plant-based options on this list, but there are 9 different types of essential amino acids. So again, same thing we talked about on the last slide, getting a variety is really crucial for our body to get all of those benefits. Next, we're talking about herbs and spices for the brain. So number 1, saffron. Saffron can be utilized for low mood and depression. You can use this as a spice in your food, and it's also sold in capsule form as well. It's one of those pricier herbs, so just using a little bit can go a long way. Peppermint. I'm wondering if anybody else as a kid, did your teachers give out peppermints before big exams? Mine did. And I remember sitting there as a kid and wondering, why are they giving us peppermints? Like, that's nice and all, but what is this about? And as an adult, diving into the research, there's some science behind it. So peppermint really has an awakening effect. It encourages focus. Carolyn, are there scientific studies that show that diet has an impact on brain health? Yes, there are definitely some scientific studies out there. It would take a little bit of digging to find it, but they're there. Ginger also provides digestive support, which we're going to talk a little bit more about when we talk about gut health. And I think the scientific studies probably are going to be mostly around gut health and how gut health is related to brain health. And the health of our gut is definitely dependent on diet and the foods that we eat. Turmeric is anti-inflammatory. It's been shown to decrease plaque buildup in the brain that causes Alzheimer's disease. So that's one study specific to turmeric. And a tip here is to consume turmeric with black pepper and a healthy fat like coconut oil. This helps to boost the absorption of the curcumin, which is that anti-inflammatory property that we're really looking to benefit from. And the last one is rhodiola. Rhodiola supports learning and memory and has natural antidepressive properties when used properly. And I want to point out that this is a strong herb, so it should be used in increments. Definitely recommend working with a practitioner on that, but it's really supportive herb that can be found in capsule form or tincture form as well. Okay, so I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about some foods to reduce and eliminate as it pertains to the health of our brains. So I encourage you to familiarize yourself with food labels. The most nutritious foods are the foods without an ingredient list at all. Those are whole foods or whole food ingredients found on the ingredient list are really what you want to look for. So things that you recognize, ingredients that you recognize, words that you recognize. So as we think about these overly processed. Oh, sorry, did someone have a question? No? Okay. So overly processed foods are the foods that go through so much in the production stage that it really degrades their nutrients and oftentimes have a lot of added ingredients, preservatives, and things that really don't serve our bodies. So be cognizant of those ingredients lists that are really long and have things that you don't recognize. Those are foods we should be cautious of. sugary beverages, high fructose corn syrup, refined sugars and artificial sweeteners, artificial trans fats, certain oils we want to avoid, like canola, corn, safflower, and soybean oil. Also, fish high in mercury can have an impact on the brain if it's building up over time. So fish like swordfish, tuna, king mackerel, consume these sparingly. My recommendation is they do have other great nutrients, but they can cause a buildup of mercury if they're consumed too frequently. Of course, excess alcohol has a negative impact on brain health as well. And then I want to point out natural flavors. If you see this on a food label, I recommend consuming with caution. Really research the producer. Not all are bad, but this is kind of a catch-all term that is not heavily regulated, and it can contain both artificial and synthetic chemicals as well. And then dyes. I'm going to talk specifically about red dye number 40 as it pertains to brain health. Red dye is a synthetic petroleum-based substance, and our bodies don't have the capability to break it down. I'm going to read this quote from the Amen Clinic. It was from earlier this year. Red dye 40 has been linked to a host of physical and mental health issues, including ADD, ADHD, allergies, immune disorders, issues with the brain's wiring or electrical activity, and inflammatory bowel diseases. So here are some foods and other products where red dye might be hiding. Even some unsuspected places like salad dressings, cosmetics, personal hygiene products, those sorts of things can be really sneaky. And because anything that we really absorb anything that we put in our bodies, but also anything that we put on our bodies. So I've listed here some of the ways it might be labeled as well. I think some people are becoming more aware of the risks of red dye number 40. And so these food companies have a tricky way of disguising these ingredients. So these are especially found in our foods that appeal to children. So something to be aware of if you've got little rugrats running around as well. And environmental toxins. So these are toxins that we should all be aware of, but it's nearly impossible to avoid them altogether. But it's worth mentioning in this conversation. So many of these toxins disrupt our natural hormone production and excretion, which thus impacts the health of our brain. So we'll touch on this one a little bit more, but unfiltered water, non-stick pans, Teflon pans that contain PFAs, now coined as forever chemicals because they really don't break down in our bodies and they don't break down in our environment either. Plastics, lots of awareness around this one, but try to avoid BPA. It can be found in water bottles or food containers. Even polyester and nylon-based clothing is just something to be aware of. Synthetic perfumes or fragrances. So a lot of air fresheners that we have in our home, they might make our home smell really nice, but they're actually quite toxic, many of them. So do a little bit of research if that's something that you enjoy in your home. And then harsh chemicals like glyphosate, which is a really intense herbicide and a pesticide that has been used for many years. There is increasing regulation around it. So I'm really happy to see that. But it's really has played a big role in the impact on our hormones individually and on a societal level as well. And then bleach, just one of those products that we might be using frequently. I recommend just using these as needed. Avoid them if you can. And then using gloves or some sort of protective mechanism as well to just try to eliminate some of that toxic load whenever possible. Next, we're going to talk about some key supplements for the brain. These are nutrients that our brain needs in order to function properly. So I always recommend getting your levels checked because bioindividuality is really important when considering supplements. Everybody is different. Every body is different. So I also want to point out that the quality of supplements is really important to look out for. So always check the ingredients to, again, avoid any added chemicals or fillers that don't need to be there. And your supplements should be labeled as pharmaceutical grade as well. So the first is vitamin D. Vitamin D has neuroprotective properties. They supports a strong immune system and helps the body to absorb and retain nutrients. And the best way to get vitamin D is from sunlight. So 15 minutes of sunshine per day, before 10 a.m. when possible, and without sunglasses. This really also helps to reset the circadian rhythm of our bodies. And vitamin D can be hard to get solely from the sun, especially depending on where you live and what time of year it is. So I've listed here some additional food sources. We've talked a lot about most of these already today, so something to keep in mind as we're prioritizing the health of our brain. And then if you're still not getting adequate amounts, if you're getting your levels tested and you don't have the right levels, supplementation is an option. Cod liver oil is a great source. Wild caught is what I recommend. And then D3 with K2. And it's best to be taken with a fat source. The fat source and the K2 help the vitamin D to absorb into our body and not just get excreted. Next is magnesium. It's estimated that 75% of Americans are deficient in this vital mineral. This is due to the nutrient depletion of our soil that our food is grown in. And another factor is that stress depletes our magnesium reserves. And we all know that we're living with a host of stress coming from all directions. So our magnesium levels are constantly in this ebb and flow. So we really want to make sure that we are supporting our magnesium levels. So some food suggestions are listed here. And for supplementation, there are many types of magnesium. These are some of the most targeted forms. Magnesium glycinate. This can be used specifically for relaxation and sleep. Magnesium citrate for digestive support. And I recommend avoiding magnesium oxide only because it's really not easily absorbed by the body. You'll find this form of magnesium in the cheaper supplements because it's more of a filler. Our bodies aren't really absorbing it that well. And then another alternative is a magnesium salt bath. You can also find magnesium lotion or a spray that you can spray on your skin. Again, we absorb everything we put in and on our bodies. How often is a magnesium bath good to do? You can do it every day. Yep, if you have the time, by all means. Also, it's just going to support your relaxation in general, so definitely recommend that. Next is B vitamins. So B12, B6, and B9, also known as folate, all boost the production of neurotransmitters to support our brain health and our function. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that deliver messages between neurons in the brain and the body. And studies have shown that B vitamins may help in preventing dementia as well. They play a key role in our energy production, reducing oxidative stress, or otherwise known as too many unstable circulating molecules in the body. And there are quite a few on this list. We've mentioned most of these, some we haven't. Nutritional yeast, I want to point out, it's all the way at the bottom, but that's a great one, especially if you practice a plant-based lifestyle. And there are a lot of plant-based sources listed here, but supplementation is especially important to consider for anybody who practices a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle. B vitamins are more difficult to get from plant-based sources. Again, get your levels checked, and keep this in mind if this is a part of your lifestyle. Okay, next we're talking about the microbiome and mood. A microbiome is a collection of microbes, such as bacteria, fungi, even viruses that naturally live in and on our bodies. And the bacteria in the microbiome is what helps to digest our food, regulates our immune system, and protects against other bacteria that causes diseases. So the health of our gut is determined by the state of our microbiome. So here are some signs of a healthy microbiome. You're having regular bowel movements every day, a nice amount, very little disruption from the digestive symptoms. You really shouldn't feel that much. I think this is really common for us to think that, abdominal pain and bloating are normal, but they're really not normal. A stable mood is a sign of a healthy microbiome as well. And it helps the ability to deal with the stressors of our everyday life when our microbiome is healthy. So some signs of a disrupted microbiome are frequent bowel upset or irregularity, excessive gas, bloating, or pain, sugar cravings, skin issues, fatigue, moodiness, increased anxiety or depression. These are all signs to really look out for and signals from the body to prioritize our microbiome a little bit more. So to support the microbiome as a whole, we really need to support digestion. So digestion is more than just what we eat, it's also how we eat. So think of Pavlov's dog. Eventually, the dog knew that it would get a treat when the bell rang, and then the dog drooled. Us humans are really not that much different, and I'm sure you can think of a time where you drooled over some delicious treat involuntarily. That is our body's way of kicking off digestion and starting that enzyme production in our mouth. So we can assist in that by creating the right environment for digestion and activating our parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digest. So let's talk about the stages of digestion. Digestion starts in the brain. Saliva begins that chemical breakdown of our food, and then chewing is the mechanical breakdown of our food. And then once the food gets to the stomach, it really only has acids and other enzymes to break down our food. So we can support digestion by slowing down and really chewing our food thoroughly. I have on the slide 20 to 30 chews per bite. By no means am I recommending you counting every chew, but think of creating a smoothie-like texture within your mouth. And the numbers really there to help you when you really start to sit down and think about chewing your food thoroughly. That's roughly how many chews you should have per bite. And then some mindful eating practices can be super supportive as well. So practicing 3 deep breaths before your meals. Avoid eating on the go whenever possible. Avoiding distractions and being present with your meals is really going to support your digestion. And then a gratitude practice can be really nice as well. I personally like to think about all of the factors that came into play to get the food on my plate. Even just to have the food is definitely a privilege, but thinking about the plants and the animals, thinking about the farmers, even the sun, and all the factors that came into play to get that delicious meal on your plate. That's a beautiful gratitude practice you could think about incorporating. And then as it pertains to meal prep, we talked a little bit about this, but prioritizing whole food ingredients, that's going to help your digestion most optimally. And then balancing our meals and snacks with a protein, a carbohydrate, and healthy fat source is really going to support our digestion. It's also going to help us extract all of those nutrients and absorb what our body needs. And then prioritizing fiber-rich foods, some of which are listed here. Fiber supports the elimination of food, which we know is important for our brain health and our mood, and also just helps us to feel fuller for longer. Next topic is hydration. I'm going to take a sip of water right now. I invite you to do the same if you've got one nearby. Hydration is really important for digestion as well as brain function. So dehydration of just 3% causes a decrease in mental capacity by 20 to 30%. So proper hydration is really crucial for the brain to function optimally. So here are some ways to stay hydrated. I always recommend high quality filtered water. The water coming from our faucets is, definitely depends on where we live, but it's got a lot of added chemicals and things that we really don't need and can harm our bodies as well. If you are drinking bottled water, I recommend in a glass, if you can find it, and labeled bottled at the source. It's going to be on the back of the label at the very bottom. If it doesn't say bottled at the source, it's going through other chemical processes to transport that water from the source to the bottling facility. Sometimes they add chlorine and then they extract it before bottling it. This process really degrades the benefits from our water. And as far as the quantity, I recommend drinking half of your body weight in pounds in ounces every day. More if you're super active or if you are very prone to sweating often, you would need more water than most. And then you can also add a pinch of high quality sea salt to your water. Sea salt can be added for the additional minerals, electrolytes, and also boost the absorption of that water. You can also add some citrus to stimulate acid production for digestion, so lemon or lime. And then, of course, eating hydrating foods. Foods that have a high water content will help your hydration levels as well. So here are some daily practices to cultivate balance. This is going to help support our brain. And the reason we're talking about this is because less sleep is less blood flow to the brain. What brand of sea salt do you recommend? I recommend Celtic sea salt. It's in a blue package. There's like I think he's like a farmer on the logo. That's my go-to. So less sleep is less blood flow to the brain. So sleep is one of the topics. And while we sleep, our brains are really busy cleaning up old cells. So let me know in the chat, how many hours of sleep do you get per night on average? This can be a challenge again in our society. It's really difficult to get the sleep we need, but sounds like 7 to 8. Awesome. So you guys are really prioritizing your sleep, which is amazing. And then movement and mindfulness. Movement is also going to boost our blood flow to the entire body, which of course is going to boost blood flow to the brain as well. So specifically sleep. Some ways that we can support our sleep is cultivating a routine. So establishing a wake time and a sleep time to guarantee that at least 8 hours if you can get it. Sounds like most of you are doing that. Creating an evening routine, like taking a bath. Maybe it's a magnesium bath. Reading a book, maybe meditation, if that's something that calls to you. Avoiding light from technology an hour before bed can be a great way to start to signal to the body that it's time to wind down. And then creating a morning routine. So I recommend avoid checking your phone first thing in the morning. This is very stimulating for our body and for our brain. And then you can also incorporate some other mindfulness practices as well. And then as far as your sleep environment, prioritizing a dark, quiet, and cool environment is going to help your sleep. It's going to help you sleep more deeply as well. And then another little tip here is that you could turn your Wi-Fi off at night, especially if you live in a tight space like I do. I'm in Brooklyn and I live in a small space. So turning my Wi-Fi off at night so it's not disrupting my sleep is supportive as well. And movement. So movement not only boosts blood flow to the brain, it also triggers the release of serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin, also known as the happy hormone, plays a key role in regulating our mood. Dopamine supports maintaining motivation and drive in our everyday lives. And a recent study over the course of 12 weeks showed that just 30 minutes of walking 4 times a week improved memory function and neural connectivity in both cognitively healthy adults and those with cognitive decline. So just walking 30 minutes a day can really have a lot of benefits, and it can be that simple. So here are some other ideas if you need some inspiration around incorporating more movement into your everyday life. And also, if you can find a way to incorporate play in your daily movement, this can make it really fun, and it's more accessible to us when we know that we're going to have a good time. So try to think of a movement-based activity that you loved doing as a kid. Let me know in the chat if you want to chime in. Is anything coming to mind that you haven't done in a really long time that would feel really fun as an adult to try? We can inspire each other here. I loved to dance, and I loved to ride my bike around the neighborhood. So still, those are my go-tos. That's what I try to incorporate. And when I do, I always feel a little bit lighter. So I invite you to think of a goal you'd like to set around movement. Ooh, MJ liked to climb trees. Me too. That one slipped my mind. That one can be more difficult as we age, but so much fun. I love that one. Oh, hula hoop. So good. Jump roping can be good. I love these. Next, we're talking about stress and the fight or flight response. So stress triggers the sympathetic nervous system, aka the fight or flight response. So stressful everyday events can trigger this response, and some of the sensations that you may feel are a rise in temperature, blood rushing to the face, maybe you feel hot, rapid heart rate, maybe your stomach is turning. This is that response in action. It's an innate response that the body uses to protect us. It's really important, but we don't need it quite as often as we are experiencing it in our current lives and in our current society. And it really ties back to when we were nomads and we encountered life-threatening terrain, carnivorous animals every day. Our brains and our bodies really needed that effect to snap into action and run. And our brains today are really not that much different from our Paleolithic ancestors. So while this is really useful in many ways, it slows down crucial bodily functions like digestion, like healing, and hormone production. So it's important to shift the body back into a state of calm after a stressful episode. a stressful episode, big or small. And the reason we need to shift back into that calm state is so that our body can perform all of those normal functions again. So I want to play this video of these two dogs that really demonstrate a technique that we can learn and utilize from observing our furry friends. So let me play this. And you'll see that the dogs are kind of playing. The white one's shaking it off. He's going on about his business. The orange one's going to do the same thing, shaking its entire body. So we can try this technique together. We've been sitting here for a little while now, so let's try to shift our energy. I invite you to stand up if you're able to, and just start shaking your arms. And you can swing them back and forth. You can try shaking your head, shaking your legs, just for about 10 seconds. Take some deep breaths. You can sigh if that feels good. Just shake your body. Shake your body like those dogs. They're moving about their day. They're letting it all go. And find your way back to your seat if you stood up. And let me know, do you feel any shifts in the body? If there's one word that comes to mind, I'd love to hear it, or feel free to write it down in your notebook. For me, I feel a slight buzzing sensation in my body. It feels super grounding. I feel like I'm back in this moment. So this is something that we can utilize whenever we need it. So we're talking a little bit about meditation next. Being that all of you here are with Alternative Balance, you may be familiar with meditation, and there's so many great techniques that we can utilize. But meditation really helps to grow the beneficial gray matter in the brain. It strengthens our memory and our cognitive flexibility, improves our focus, and also calms the nervous system. And this gray matter is associated with better cognitive function and allows for better movement and memory and emotions. So here are some techniques and tools that you can utilize. I definitely recommend exploring a couple options and finding what works best for you and what feels best in your body. Is hiking a meditation? It definitely can be used as a meditation. Being mindful with your stepping, observing the world around you can be really meditative. So again, finding what really resonates with you, you can make it a meditation if that's what you're looking for. That's beautiful. So I've got a couple bonus tips to close off the webinar today. One is cold exposure. You can boost your showers or your baths with a cold therapy blitz at the end. Just a few benefits. Cold showers and cold exposures sends blood flow to your vital organs. It improves circulation and also helps to drain lymphatic fluid. It also builds willpower and can improve the appearance of your skin and hair as well. Number 2 is grounding. This is an ancient technique of placing your bare feet or hands on the ground or dirt. And a recent study by the National Library of Medicine showed that grounding improves sleep, normalizes the day to night cortisol rhythm, reduces pain, stress, and increases the speed of wound healing as well. And as little as just 10 minutes can have this impact on the body, and it's a cumulative effect. So as often as you can do it is amazing. And third is tuning the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a cluster of nerves that regulate our organ function. So tuning the vagus nerve supports the parasympathetic nervous system that rests and digests, supports digestion in the immune system, helps to manage TMJ and jaw pain if that's something you're struggling with, and just promotes a state of calm. So some techniques are humming and singing, stimulates the vagus nerve. Any deep breathing exercises, that cold water exposure, it's got a lot of benefits, one of which is tuning the vagus nerve, and gargling water. So I want to end off by addressing some of the signals that our body sends us when it's crucial to utilize the tools we've talked about today. Some of the symptoms listed here can be normalized in our society and our culture, and they really shouldn't be. Many of the diseases and mental health issues that I've mentioned today are caused by inflammation of the brain. And our culture is highly inflammatory, and it really takes intentional effort to rest. So if you suffer from any of these symptoms on a regular basis, I want to encourage you that some of these symptoms could be a distant memory just by incorporating some of these brain supporting foods and some of the tools that we've talked about today. And of course, there are many other factors at play, but the environment that we create for our bodies and our minds is often overlooked and truly powerful and truly impactful. So we're coming to a close, and I hope you're feeling inspired and ready to set some brain boosting goals. If anyone feels called to share, feel free to chime in, unmute yourself, or drop in the chat. I'd love to hear some of your takeaways from today. Is there anything that you heard today that you're really interested in trying or incorporating? Let me know. One of my favorites has been tuning the vagus nerve. I go back to that one really often, and the more I do it, the better I feel. Really simple exercises that have a big impact. Eating slowly, yes. That's a good one. And I'll just leave a few minutes. I see we've just got a couple minutes left. We're actually over time a little bit. I apologize for that. But if anybody has any questions, please let me know. And before we hop off, here are some ways that you can find me, find out more about the work that I do, or if you just want to chat, here's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm accepting new clients at this time, so please feel free to reach out if someone you know could benefit from individualized guidance. And awesome, thank you. My information's dropped in the chat, and I'm also offering Alternative Balance members. Please extend this to your families and friends as well. I'm offering a discount. I very rarely do that. So $100 off my 3-month wellness plan and $200 off the 7-month wellness plan. So visit my website to book a call today. I offer free intro sessions as well if you want to just chat and hear more about my work and see if it's a good fit. Please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from all of you. And thank you so much for being here. It's truly been a pleasure.